Everyone was shocked when we announced it was a girl, and thought I cheated on my husband because we were having a girl. My mother-in-law thinks I cheated on my husband because we were having a girl. She laid hands on me when I was 8 months pregnant. There hasn't been a girl born on my husband's side of the family in over 100 years, and there's a long-standing joke that the men in his family can't produce female babies. Fast forward to our wedding night, where my mother-in-law looked me dead in the eye and said, "Now go make us our son. Don't you dare let us down." I nervously laughed, and we left for our honeymoon. During the honeymoon, we conceived a baby girl. Everyone was shocked when we announced it was a girl, and most of the family denied it until she was born. That's when the horrible comments started. Whenever my husband wasn't around, my mother-in-law and her family members would make snarky comments like, "I wonder where she got that nose. It's definitely not the husband's." Now, we are expecting our second baby, another girl. I begged my husband not to tell his mother the gender when we found out because I wanted to enjoy this pregnancy before she ruined it. I had kept the main comments his mother made about our first daughter to myself, feeling guilty about potentially ruining their relationship, considering she probably didn't have many years left. However, my husband insisted on announcing the gender at our next visit. When we did, as soon as my mother-in-law heard it was another girl, tears welled up in her eyes. She started shaking her head, sobbing, and then began yelling at me, calling me a cheater, and demanded I leave her house. My husband immediately stood up, yelling at her, demanding she apologize and watch her mouth in front of her grandkids. She cried, "Not ours. Not ours. Those girls are not ours. She's a cheater. My son did not make those girls." I started crying hysterically and picked up my daughter, who was utterly confused. My mother-in-law continued, "I let you get away with it the first time. I took you into this family. I allowed my son to believe that stupid girl, but I will not allow it again." My husband, now extremely mad, yelled at her, telling her she was out of line and how dare she call his daughter names. He said we were leaving and that she wouldn't see us again until she came to her senses. She tried to say something more, but he cut her off, saying, "By the way, Mom, I love that little girl more than I ever loved you," as he rushed us out the door. I cried and broke down, telling my husband all the nasty comments she and her family had made when he wasn't around during the 2-hour drive home. We went no contact for a few months, and everything seemed to be going great. Nearing my due date, we decided to be the bigger people and reached out to her, offering a chance to make things right. She whined and said she missed her son and granddaughter. We agreed to meet for dinner at their house after a few weeks for a proper talk and an apology from her. When we arrived and started making small talk, my husband said, "Mom, this has all been nice, but we need to talk about what happened last time we were here. I know you owe my wife an apology." My mother-in-law looked at my husband and said, "Do you have the paternity test? I am not apologizing until I'm proven wrong, and we both know I'm right. You cannot be the father. The fact that you've now apparently made 2 girls is ridiculous." My husband shouted, "What the F is wrong with you?" I started to cry and got up to grab my things and head to the car. My mother-in-law shot up, rounded the table, grabbed my shirt, and screamed at me, "How dare you try to run away from this? You're a cheater and need to own up to this problem." My husband screamed at her to get her hands off me and made his way towards us. She then decided that I couldn't be allowed to leave with her son. She slapped me across the face. My husband got in between us, furious, and started to scream at her. He grabbed my hand, and we were making our way to the door when my mother-in-law grabbed a snow globe from a shelf and threw it directly at me. It hit me in the back of my head, and I fell to my knees in pain. Before my husband could comprehend what had happened, she was grabbing anything she could find to throw in my direction. I was on my knees, holding my head with one hand and my belly with the other. My husband was screaming at the top of his lungs for her to stop. She tried to get close enough to kick me, but, thankfully, she lost momentum quickly due to her age and poor health. As a last resort, my husband pushed his mom, and she fell back into a shelf by the front door. He rushed me out. He drove me to the hospital, where I ended up getting 6 stitches in my head and was monitored for 4 days. The baby was fine, but the hospital demanded we file a police report. We found out that when my husband pushed his mom, she ended up breaking 2 fingers and claimed the excessive force hurt her neck badly. The cops took our side of the story and compared it to our report filed at the hospital. They told us my mother-in-law was pressing charges against my husband for assault while we were pressing charges against her. My husband got arrested but was quickly released after my father-in-law was forced to tell the truth, and then my mother-in-law got arrested. My father-in-law begged us to drop the charges, saying no one was hurt and that we were being cruel to lock up an elderly woman. We are currently at home, waiting for baby number 2 to arrive. I'm on strict bed rest, and my husband has taken the week off work to care for me and our first daughter. I asked my husband if we could get a paternity test for both girls to send to his mom in jail as a final goodbye. He thought it was a hilarious idea and suggested sending copies to all the relatives who entertained his mom's craziness, along with a letter saying none of them would ever see us or his daughters again. Over the next few days, my husband got more and more depressed. He started trying to get me to entertain the idea of minimizing his mother's actions and chalking them up to old age. I told him she would undergo full screenings for her mental health when we went to court. While she might be old, she doesn't get to assault me and accuse me of horrible things and then use her age as an excuse. As my induction day approached because the baby girl wasn't making her entrance, I found out my husband had been talking with his parents behind my back. We had a big fight when he told me he still wanted his mom to meet her granddaughter before we resumed the legal issues. I was crying, feeling betrayed. I reminded him of the no contact and restraining orders. He said they were issued to me, not him, and the restraining order hadn't been approved yet, so his mom could meet the baby without breaking any rules. I put my foot down, saying absolutely not, and couldn't believe he would let his mom near me or the baby after she could have killed one of us. He accused me of overreacting since the baby wasn't injured and his mom wasn't trying to hurt the baby, just me. We fought, and he left, going to his mom's house a few hours away. He called me, sobbing, saying if I saw his mom, I'd understand. He said she was laid up on the sofa, unable to walk, and in severe depression. He thought the least I could do was let her meet her new grandchild. I was infuriated because he left me alone with our 2-year-old while I was supposed to be on bed rest. He didn't come home until it was time for my induction. My sister came to watch our oldest daughter, and my husband took me to the hospital. During labor, my husband asked when we could do a paternity test. I stopped and screamed, "What the F?" The nurse was silent, and the doctor said, "Sir, we are here to deliver and take care of the baby. If you have other personal relationship issues, you need to figure that out afterward. This is not the place to ask questions like that." I started crying hysterically, trying to explain that it was his baby and his mom was crazy. I felt judged and robbed of a beautiful moment. After the baby was born, I held her, but I couldn't look at my husband and wouldn't let him hold her. He left and came back an hour later, saying his mom wanted pictures of the baby. I smacked his phone out of his hand, and he got angry and left. My sister had to pick us up from the hospital. We took the baby for a checkup and a paternity test. At home, things were awful. I couldn't look at my husband, and he avoided being around me or the baby, practically ignoring our oldest daughter. We fought because I was overwhelmed, trying to feed the baby while our oldest was crying because Netflix wasn't working. My husband made several comments to our daughter, blaming me for the Netflix issue, and then left me with a hysterical 2-year-old and a newborn. I seriously considered divorce. We got the paternity test results, and he was the father. He cried, saying he never doubted it and didn't need a test for our oldest daughter. I insisted on a second test as proof for court. I told him I had never cheated and was hurt by his comments in the hospital. He tried to apologize, but I pushed him away. My oldest daughter, my baby, and I are now staying at my sister's house. My husband refuses to take the other paternity test. My sister has contacted a lawyer on my behalf. After moving to my sister's house, I tried to focus on my girls and rebuilding my strength. My sister has been a tremendous support, helping with the children and dealing with the legal aspects. I felt a mixture of relief and sadness being away from my husband. The thought of divorce became more real as the days went by. The lawyer my sister contacted was very understanding and took a keen interest in our case. We discussed the possibility of a restraining order against my mother-in-law and the potential for divorce proceedings. The lawyer also emphasized the importance of documenting everything that happened, including the assault and the emotional abuse from my husband and his family. One evening, while I was settling the girls down for bed, my husband called. He sounded desperate, pleading with me to come home and insisting that things would change. He apologized profusely for his actions, especially for the comments he made in the hospital and his behavior since the baby's birth. He swore that he was influenced by his mother and didn't realize the extent of the hurt he was causing. I told him that I needed time to think and that I wouldn't make any decisions until the second paternity test came back. He reluctantly agreed and promised to give me space. My sister and the lawyer both advised me to proceed with caution and to prioritize the safety and well-being of myself and the children. A few days later, the second paternity test results came in, confirming what I already knew: my husband was indeed the father of both of our daughters. I felt a sense of vindication but also a deep sadness for what our relationship had become. I forwarded the results to the lawyer and my husband. The lawyer suggested using this as leverage in court to demonstrate the baselessness of my mother-in-law's accusations. My husband showed up at my sister's house the next day, holding the test results. He looked broken, apologizing again and again, begging for another chance. He admitted that he had cut ties with his mother, telling her that she would never see him or his daughters again unless she sought professional help, and sincerely apologized for her actions. He said he wanted to go to counseling and work on our marriage, promising that he would do anything to make things right. I felt conflicted. On one hand, I saw his remorse and the potential for change. On the other hand, the hurt and betrayal were still very fresh. I agreed to attend one counseling session together, but I made it clear that this was not a guarantee of reconciliation. I needed to see real change and effort from him before I could consider moving back home. The first counseling session was tough but revealing. My husband opened up about the immense pressure he felt from his family, especially his mother. He acknowledged how he let that pressure cloud his judgment and damage our relationship. The counselor helped us navigate through the anger and pain, emphasizing the importance of rebuilding trust and communication. Over the next few weeks, we attended more sessions. My husband showed genuine effort, taking on more responsibilities with the children and actively participating in counseling. Slowly, I started to see glimpses of the man I married, and I began to consider the possibility of giving our marriage another chance. However, I remained cautious. I set clear boundaries regarding his family, particularly his mother. We agreed that she would have no contact with me or the children unless she made a sincere effort to change. My husband also agreed to continue counseling, both individually and together. Eventually, I moved back home, but I took it one day at a time. Rebuilding our relationship was a slow and delicate process. Trust had to be earned, and I made sure my husband understood that any violation of our agreement would result in immediate separation. As for my mother-in-law, she faced legal consequences for her actions. The court ordered her to undergo a psychological evaluation and mandated anger management classes. Her relationship with my husband remained strained, but he stood firm in protecting our family from her toxicity. Through all of this, I learned the importance of standing up for myself and my children, no matter the pressure from others. My husband and I are still working on our marriage, but I am hopeful for the future. Our daughters deserve a loving, stable home, and I am determined to provide that for them, with or without my husband's cooperation. The journey is far from over, but I am stronger now, knowing that I have the support of my sister, my lawyer, and a renewed sense of self-worth. I will continue to fight for my family and for the peace and happiness we deserve.